Hello, I want to thank you all for joining me again on the podcast of how to play the game of college. Super excited. As you all know, the past few weeks, we have now been interviewing students. Of course, we started off with college professionals giving you expert advice, but I really feel like the real experts are the students themselves. And I love the guest that I have today, Mr. Chris Bell. Chris is actually a graduate student at the University of Memphis. And so, first off, I want to just welcome you to the podcast, Chris.
I appreciate you inviting me out to the podcast. I really do.
Yes, yes, yes. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. If you can, just tell us a little bit about, your journey, Chris. Like if you go back, it hadn't probably been far, but if you go back to your undergraduate career, kind of talk about how you made that choice to go to the University of Memphis. And then we'll kind of talk about how you made this decision also to attend graduate school at the University of Memphis also.
Gotcha. Well, again, thank you for inviting me to the podcast. My name is Chris Bell. I'm a graduate student at the University of Memphis. I'm studying health studies. And I also went to the University of Memphis for my undergrad, and I also studied health. I was focusing on health studies when I was there as well. And so, for my college journey and figuring out where I wanted to go to school, it was an interesting process for me, just because a lot of my family hadn't been to college. So I was trying to figure out a lot of things on my own. But I knew when I made my decision that I wanted to be away from home. I grew up in Illinois, and so
Okay.
in-state tuition in Illinois is really expensive, and so a lot of out-of-state tuitions are cheaper than in-state tuition for Illinois.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I knew I wanted to get away and kind of experience life a little bit, give myself a chance to find out who I really am. And so wherever I went, I wanted to make sure that I felt like I was at home, but in a new atmosphere. And so I came to the University of Memphis because I have family in Mississippi, which is not too far from Memphis. And so I wanted to make sure I still had that at home feeling. So I was able to have that. Well, out of all the other schools that I applied to, I was able to have family that I could stay with. I had people I can reach out to, but also, like I said, being in a new atmosphere. And so the University of Memphis gave that at home feeling. The city of Memphis gave that at home feeling, just new environment, really. And so
Okay.
it's something that I had other than any other school that I wanted to go to.
That's great. And Chris, I just learned something. Usually, I like how you and I kind of for our guests like to break things down. So you talked about in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition.
Mhm.
Usually, and like I said, I'm learning something today. Usually, your in-state tuition, if you live somewhere, so for example, if a student live in Memphis,
Mhm.
and they attend the University of Memphis, usually is cheaper. But you're saying in Illinois, it's the opposite. So you were saying it's more expensive in state than some of the out of state choices.
Yeah, specifically the schools that I was looking into. Of
Okay.
course, it may not be the case for all of the schools, but yeah, at
Okay.
least the ones I was looking into.
Okay. Good, good, good. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about some of the finances. I like how you kind of started off with looking at the cost.
Right.
And that's a huge thing. I always tell students and parents, college is it's an investment, right? And so it's not cheap. However, it's investing in your future. But I still think we have to make those wise decisions and say, hey, where can I save money if there's in scholarships, if there's in grants, if there's in-state versus out-of-state tuition. All of those things are so very important. So, Chris, we know that you have you attended University of Memphis undergraduate, right? And now you're a graduate student. Can
Mhm.
you talk about, if you think back to any obstacles, and I know you are in an organization, are you in EMOT or were in part of Empowerment of Color that
Yeah,
you are?
so I was in Empowerment of Color. I was actually the vice president in my senior
Uh,
year.
okay.
That was last year, and so I was able to have a membership experience and also have the executive experience as well.
Okay, good, good, good. So I think if we talk about, a lot of times, and I get the question a whole lot with me working in post-secondary, looking at the data sometimes, we look at a lot of African American males, number one, are just not going to college.
Right,
But when they get there, a lot of them are unsuccessful with completing college.
right.
Not necessarily yourself because you're doing great, right? But if you look at some of your colleagues, right, or some of the
Mhm.
other students that you kind of had dealings with, what were some of the obstacles when we look at Black men? Why do you think, in your opinion, that a lot of Black men are like, hey, I want to go to college, or if when they get there, they're not completing?
I think this is a great question and something that I think about a lot, especially being a black man. In terms of my experience and my colleagues' experience, the ones who have not finished, it's been outside things that have had a big effect, whether it's family matters or there's a better job opportunity or they're just not making any money, different things like that. Those have been like the big outside factors I've seen from people around me, but
Okay.
also I would say a lack of motivation and a lack of reaching out when they are struggling. I'm not the best at reaching out when I need help.
Okay.
It takes a very long time for me to get to that point, and so at some point I will, if it gets too bad. But from my experience with myself and from others, I've seen that we don't reach out when it gets really bad.
Uh-huh. And it's funny you said that, Chris. I know you in my book, How to Play the Game of College, that's the first chapter is ask for help.
Yeah,
And it's something, we take it kind of for granted that everybody's gonna raise their hand or they just know where to go, right? But a lot of times we look at college campuses, we have first generation college students. So it's like a foreign land to them, right? Or, sometimes you just, hey, I want to take care of myself. I don't want to seem like I need the help. So I like how you kind of mentioning that for some people, it's just not an easy thing to do of asking for help. So I guess if we look at the different resources, right, on a college campus, we talked about, some of the obstacles. And like you said, a lot of times it's external things. It can be that folks like, hey, I want to work, make money. When we look at folks that are excelling like yourself, Chris, on a college campus, what have been some of those resources? If you can maybe name two or three that have really helped you to navigate through college.
yeah. So I think as a whole, just the involvement experience in general, it opens your eyes
Okay.
to so much more that is offered on campus. And so my freshman year, in 2019, I applied to be an orientation guide. And so we had to have
Okay.
a class with that, and we learned about all campuses' resources, the different organizations, and things like that. And that opened the gateway to me finding out about so much more and having more so of a support system. And so, with these student organizations, you may have a faculty advisor, you may have faculty you report to, and that was my way in getting involved with our office, the Multicultural Affairs. That's where I work with EMOC and different student organizations like that. And so, um, I would say the Office of Multicultural Affairs has been a big help in my life, just having that relationship with the advisors and the faculty there, and being able to go into their office whenever I need something or if I just want to sit and talk. It's always an open door, and like just having those relationships with people is a big thing because you never know what way they may be able to help you.
Man, that's so true. I like how you said, relationships are so key. I think back to my experience at Middle Tennessee State University, and it's also funny you're mentioning minority and multicultural affairs office because that was my home as well. The director, if it was, scholarships available, if there was food that was happening somewhere, hey, y'all come get some pizza or whatever the case may be. Or hey, sometimes you may just get homesick or you're just going through different things. So I like how you say it's key to find individuals, and that's different for so many students. You have students that would get with a multicultural affairs office, or it could be their recruiter that maybe recruited them at their high school. Financial aid is always good, right? To have the relationships with them. Those are the money people. But whoever it is or whatever office, I think what you just said is gold, building those relationships, and really using those relationships when it comes to navigating through college. Is there anything else that you can think of that may maybe help you outside of just the involvement piece?
I guess finding, even if you aren't a person who gets involved or goes to events and things like that, I think having a community or a group of friends to do things with in general, whether it's
Okay.
eating together or y'all having class together or y'all going out to eat, just different things like that. Just so I think college can be so hard, but when you feel like you're going through the same things with other people, it makes it a lot easier. And so you won't feel that separation or that loneliness if you are going through these things with other people.
So true, so true. Kind of having that accountability circle, right? And like you said, it really helps if people are going through the same, I like to say the same, the scavenger hunt or whatever the case may be when we think about college. If you got people that's kind of there and you all could be lost at one time, but you like, hey, we got each other, let's read this map, and together we're gonna get to the final destination. So those things are so key. So I guess Chris, now let's jump to. I know we talked about resources. You talked about how you selected University of Memphis. Now let's talk about your major, right? That's usually the buzz topic when I talk to high school students and parents. How did you go? Number one, I think you mentioned it earlier. What was your undergraduate major?
Health studies or health sciences.
Health sciences, and now you're doing your master's in the same
Yep,
thing.
yep, same.
Okay. Can you talk about, I guess, career? Like, what's the end result? I guess when we look at your career, what do you think about?
You want me to start how I got to my major too? You want me to answer?
Yeah, that'd be good. Take us through that journey. Yes.
In high school, I played a bunch of sports. I've always been
Okay.
fascinated with sports and injuries and rehabilitation and things like that. And my high school, they had recruiters come in and we got to sign up and speak to different recruiters from different schools. And they talked about different things. Or we had different professors or people out in the world come in and talk about their profession. And one of the people who came in was a physical therapist. And so from hearing from a University of Memphis recruiter and from a physical therapist, that was one of the things that got me attracted to going to that school, especially being
Okay.
around sports. Because when I was enrolling, they talked about how they were going to have a PT school by the end of 2026 or whatever the date was, right? And so that was what intrigued me in the beginning. Granted, my end goal has changed. I don't want to be a physical therapist anymore right now.
Okay.
Right now, I'm into coaching. So I coach
Hmm.
track and field at the high school level, and I'm just looking to move up in the rankings, I guess. And
Okay.
and hopefully, the big goal is to work for USA Track and Field.
Oh, great,
So
great.
it's really big goal, but I'm doing the things to prepare myself to get there.
Man, and you will get there. I've had a privilege to the audience of working with Chris three or four times, Chris, for different panels, and he just always represents the school and just himself, right, in the best light. So, man, definitely appreciate you. And like you said, it's a big goal, but hey, who else gonna reach it besides Chris, right? And so we're looking forward to seeing what all that you continue to do. And again, man, I like how you talked about your journey. I think it's so important, number one, for people to see, because a lot of times if you don't see it or know about it, you don't even think it's possible. And so, something as far as, I think that's why career days, sometimes students be like, it's boring. I don't want to go. I can stay in my own room. But as many times as you can go and listen to different folks who are different careers, sometimes it kind of sparks something inside of you and say, hey, it's something that I could do as well, or something I'm interested in doing. And I also like how you said you changed your major. So I know with me, I changed maybe three or four times. And I had a student on here from Morehouse, Charles, last week, and he mentioned also just trying to figure this space out. So again, there's nothing wrong when you say, hey, I want to come in doing something, but I might end up changing. I think that's what college does for you. It shows you also different experiences. And so I'm definitely glad that you highlighted that. Now, you're one of the first that I have had on here, Chris, that's now in grad school. And this is your first, you just completed your first semester?
So,
Okay. Talk to us about that. Many of the students I've talked to are just kind of getting in their first year in college. So you have a college degree, undergraduate. Now you're working on a master's, which is huge. How did you decide that, hey, I want to go and get a master's?
yeah, so it had been something that was weighing on me a lot during my senior year of college.
Okay.
I think what really drove me to it was the fact that I would be able to do what I wanted to do in terms of further my education, but also get it paid for as well. And so, a big thing with me is that I have a graduate assistantship with the Office of Multicultural Affairs, which is a great blessing, and I'm so grateful to have that opportunity with them. And
And
so,
Chris, tell us what that is when you said graduate assistantship, right? Can you tell us, the audience, what it is?
So basically, I'm a grad student, and in our office, they pay for my tuition while I also do work in their office. So
Wow.
depends on whichever office you're in or which department. But I was able to get mine in the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And
Okay.
that was the office where EMOC or Empowerment of Color is housed. And so working with student organizations and things like that.
Man, that's great. And again, a lot of times folks just don't know. I like how you said you're basically getting a free, basically a free. It is a free degree, right? And you're also getting experience of working. And it sounds like I love how they connect. Like you started off saying when you were an undergraduate, you found this office. It was felt like home, and you built relationships. And wow, now you're working on your master's, and you're working in that office, working on your master's, which is huge. And so again, that's why we tell students even starting now, right? If they're freshmen or sophomores, it's so important to build relationships because you just never know how it would turn out in your favor. You're working for their office and really getting experience at the same time, which is huge. Yes, yes, yes. Finances. And I guess since we're on the line of free, right? When we talked about earlier, out of state, in state tuition, the folks are learning a lot today, Chris. We talked about now graduate, internships that you can do. Are there any other, maybe if we're talking to a high school senior, right? Are there any other things that they can do to help to pay for college? Any things that you did to get scholarships, or when we talk about grants or filling out the FAFSA? Can you mention any of those things?
I think the big thing, I don't think I'll have anything like outside of what you mentioned, but at least in
Okay.
terms of scholarships, and grants and paying attention to things like that, I think those are very key. The University of
Okay.
Memphis, in my experience, has what they call the scholarship manager. And so it gives you a list of scholarships you're able to apply for, what they're specifically looking for, and who can apply for these different scholarships. And I think in terms of uh, for high schoolers, I think the big thing is contacting these scholarship departments and asking what do they have for help, or what things do they have for incoming students and different things like that. In my personal experience, I didn't do that. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't really have anybody who went to college, so I didn't know to ask either.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing is like just taking that step and asking the questions to get help. Even if you don't necessarily need it, it's good to have these resources just in case you might need it.
So true. And again, the thing just keeps going on throughout this interview. Ask for help, right? So, sometimes we may not know like the correct way to ask it, or it needs to sound a certain way. Sometimes you say, hey, I need help paying for school. And so, like you said, for a senior, it could be, I'm really interested in a University of Memphis or Lamont College, or whatever the case may be. Start there and maybe call the scholarship office and say, hey, do you have any scholarships that I can apply for? Or I need help with completing my financial aid application, right? But again, if a lot of times people don't know if you don't ask or say that you need help. So I like how you're constantly saying just ask for help, and you just never know, what could come from it. So man, that's huge. Chris, man, you have dropped some great information on this interview from your journey from high school to now your master's. You talked about some of the obstacles. You talked about some of the resources that are on the college campus. I liked how you also talked about some finances to kind of help you to pay for college, and just a lot of tips that you dropped on today. What is one piece of advice, looking at the camera, Chris, right? And we got seniors. I'm showing this podcast to a group of seniors at a local high school here, right? What's one piece of advice that you can leave them, now that it's January, right? And they're about to, a few months, they're going to be incoming freshman college students, that you can give them to help them to navigate, and finish. More importantly, not only get to college, we want them to finish. Can you leave them with one piece of advice?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's a lot of things I could say. But I feel like the one thing that I would say is don't be afraid. Take that chance to apply for this. Go and interview for this. Go to this event. Ask this
Mhm.
person for help. Like literally whatever it is, don't be afraid to do it just because you never know what might come from it. Like I
Man,
said, when I was a freshman, I applied to be an orientation guide. That was stepping completely out of my comfort zone, and it
okay.
opened the doors for so many other things. And so, just don't be afraid. You never know what opportunity or what might happen.
Man, we can drop the mic right there, Chris. And I think it's just a life lesson, even outside of college, right? Fear, it can stop a lot of things. But like you said, it's natural to have fear. I like how you kind of mentioned it, but you kind of have to say, hey, I'm gonna put it behind me, because if you never do it or never try it, you just never know what could come from it. So man, that's a great piece of advice. So, man, Chris, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. Chris is I'm gonna post your information of your LinkedIn or any information you want to share with students. When this post, Chris is gonna be under YouTube answer some of your questions. And so, man, again, I just want to appreciate you. And again, I said that earlier before we got on the podcast, but students like you inspire me in this work daily. So every time I meet a student, and Chris is one that I met a few times, I wake up and I'm like, man, the work that I'm doing, I can kind of just see it in students like yourself, man. So hats off to you. And again, the best is yet to come. I can't wait to see what you all, not just the one or two things, all that you will do once you leave the University of Memphis. Thank you so much, Chris. And our guest, as always, join me every Wednesday for a brand new podcast. 2024, y'all, I'm bringing some heat, as y'all can see with Chris. And so I look forward to seeing you all next week. And make sure that you go to my website at www.drshawnboyd.com and purchase the book of How to Play the Game of College. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you.